The massive chamber stretched out like a metal canyon, its walls gleaming under artificial starlight. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the curved seats, their voices mixing into an angry buzz that echoed off the high ceiling. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the small section marked for junior members, watching the chaos unfold before her. At the center of the room, three groups faced each other like angry animals ready to fight. The Spherian Empire delegates stood tall and proud in their black uniforms, medals covering their chests. Their leader, General Vorthak, slammed his metal fist on the speaking platform. The Nexus Collective caused this disaster with their reckless experiments, he roared, his voice cutting through the noise. Their machines have torn holes in space itself. Now whole star systems are disappearing into nothing. The Nexus representatives looked like walking computers, with glowing circuits visible under their pale skin. Their spokesman, Processing Unit 7, responded in a cold electronic voice. Our calculations show a 99.7% probability that Zephyrian weapon testing destabilized local spacetime. Your wargames have consequences. From the third section, the ethereal Dominion's delegate floated slightly above her seat, her form shifting between solid and transparent. Lady Mistral's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Both of you are blind to the truth. The Void Blight feeds on negative energy. Your constant fighting has attracted this cosmic horror to our galaxy. Chen watched the argument grow worse. For 3 months, these powerful civilizations had been pointing fingers, while the dark plague called the Void Blight continued spreading. It had already consumed 12 star systems, turning suns into black holes and planets into empty space. Billions of people had died, while these leaders argued about who was to blame. The Zephyrians controlled the largest military force in the galaxy. Their ships could crack planets in half, and their soldiers were known throughout space as unstoppable warriors. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and made other species bow to their empire. The Nexus Collective was different, but equally powerful. They had turned themselves into living computers, their minds connected to vast networks that could calculate the movement of stars. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed like magic to most species. They could build entire worlds in days and create artificial life with a thought. The ethereal Dominion was the strangest of the three. They had learned to exist partly outside normal reality, able to phase through matter and manipulate energy with their minds. Some said they could see the future. Others claimed they could speak to dead civilizations. What everyone knew was that they were dangerous in ways that regular weapons could not touch. Each group was powerful enough to rule the galaxy alone. Together, they formed an uneasy balance that had kept the peace for centuries. But now, faced with the Void Blight, their old hatreds were breaking that balance apart. The solution is obvious, General Vorthak continued, his scarred face twisting with anger. We must combine our fleets and destroy the source of this plague with overwhelming firepower. Processing Unit 7 circuits flickered faster, showing increased processing activity. Destruction-based solutions show a 78% failure rate. The Blight absorbs energy attacks. We must study it, understand its structure, then develop a precise technological countermeasure. Lady Mistral's form became more solid as her emotions strengthened. You both think like machines of war and science. The Blight is beyond such simple approaches. It exists in the spaces between dimensions. Only through cosmic harmony and spiritual unity can we hope to banish it back to the void. The argument continued, growing louder and more heated. Other species tried to offer suggestions, but the big three ignored them completely. The smaller civilizations had learned long ago that their opinions meant nothing when the galactic powers were fighting. Chen had been watching this same scene for weeks. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They were seen as newcomers, barely advanced enough to deserve a seat at the table. Their small section in the observer area said everything about how the galaxy viewed them. Humans had no reality-bending technology like the Nexus. They could not phase through dimensions like the Ethereals. Their military was tiny compared to the Zephyrian Empire. Most species saw them as clever but limited, good at fixing things, but not much else. The arguing reached a new level when General Vorthak accused the Nexus of hiding crucial data. Processing Unit 7 responded by suggesting that Zephyrian intelligence was too limited to understand complex scientific concepts. Lady Mistral declared that both of them were spiritually blind and could never comprehend cosmic forces. Chen looked around the chamber at the faces of other delegates. She saw fear, anger, and desperation. The smaller species knew they were helpless if the big three could not agree. Some had already started evacuation plans for their home worlds. Others were preparing to surrender to whatever power might eventually take control. A new report came in through the chamber's communication system. Another star system had gone dark. The Kalian system, home to 4 billion people, had simply vanished from all sensors 12 hours ago. The void blight was accelerating. The news made the argument even worse. Accusations flew back and forth. Threats were made. General Vorthak's hand moved toward his weapon. The Nexus delegates' circuits began glowing brighter, indicating they were accessing battle protocols. Lady Mistral started to fade, preparing to phase out of normal space. Chen stood up from her seat. The movement was small in the huge chamber, but something about it caught attention. Maybe it was the way she moved, calm and purposeful while everyone else was angry and afraid. Maybe it was just that nobody expected the human to do anything at all. She walked down the steps toward the speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. The big three stopped arguing to watch her approach. Other delegates turned to stare. What could the human possibly have to say? Chen reached the platform and looked up at the three most powerful beings in the galaxy. She spoke in a clear, steady voice that carried across the silent chamber. "Fine," she said simply. "If you won't handle this, humanity will." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, the laughter started. The laughter echoed through the vast chamber like thunder. General Vorthak threw back his head and roared with amusement, his metals jingling as his shoulders shook. The Nexus delegates made clicking sounds that served as their version of laughter, their circuits flashing in rhythmic patterns. Even Lady Mistral smiled, her ethereal form shimmering with what looked like joy. "The humans think they can solve the void blight," Vorthak gasped between laughs. "These primitives, who still use metal ships and chemical rockets, they barely learned to travel between stars 50 years ago." Processing Unit 7's voice carried electronic amusement. "Human technology rates 2.3 on the Galactic Advancement Scale. The Blight requires solutions rating at minimum 8.7. Mathematical impossibility detected." Throughout the chamber, other species joined the laughter. The snake-like Sithrak hissed with humor. The crystal beings of Praxis chimed like broken bells. Even species that usually respected humans found the idea ridiculous. Chen stood quietly on the platform, waiting for the noise to die down. Her calm expression never changed, even as tears of laughter rolled down alien faces around her. When the chamber finally grew quiet again, she spoke once more. "We'll start immediately," she said, then turned and walked back to her seat. The session broke up soon after. The three major powers returned to their separate arguments, now with the added joke about human arrogance to share among themselves. Within hours, the story was spreading across the galaxy through faster-than-light communication networks. On military ships, Zephyrian soldiers told the joke while cleaning their weapons. In Nexus research stations, AI units calculated humor algorithms based on the absurdity of human confidence. Ethereal meditation circles found spiritual meaning in humanity's ignorance of cosmic forces. But while the galaxy laughed, something else was happening. Quietly, without fanfare or announcements, human ships began moving. The first sign was subtle. A cargo vessel here, a research ship there, all heading toward the edge of space where the void blight was spreading. Human colonies that had been peaceful and isolated suddenly showed increased activity. Ships that had been in storage for decades were being repaired and launched. Captain Maria Santos commanded the human research vessel Determination. Her ship was old and ugly compared to Nexus designs, built from simple metal and ceramic composites. No one paid attention as she guided it toward the Helix Nebula, where the blight had consumed 3 worlds just last week. "Captain," her science officer reported, "we're getting massive energy readings from the blight zone ahead. Every other species has marked this area as absolutely forbidden." Santos smiled, a blemish that made her crew slightly nervous. Humans had a reputation for smiling right before they did something dangerous. "That's exactly where we need to be, Lieutenant. Take us in." The ship moved forward into space that seemed wrong somehow. Stars looked twisted, and the darkness between them seemed too dark. Other ships would have turned back immediately, but the Determination continued deeper into the affected zone. Meanwhile, on the human colony world of New Geneva, Dr. James Wright was working in a laboratory that did not officially exist. For 30 years, he had been studying strange reports from deep space explorers. Energy signatures that made no sense. Matter that seemed to exist and not exist at the same time. Phenomena that other species ignored because they were too busy with their own advanced projects. Wright's team was small and underfunded compared to Nexus research groups. They used equipment that other species would consider primitive. But they had something the advanced civilizations had forgotten how to use: curiosity without limits. "The samples from the Perseus incident are ready," his assistant announced. She was holding a container that seemed to bend light around it in strange ways. "Perfect," Wright replied, putting on protective gear that looked like medieval armor compared to ethereal energy shields. "Let's see what this thing really is." Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Engineers who had spent decades being ignored by galactic science councils were pulling out designs they had worked on in secret. Military officers who had been considered primitive by Zephyrian standards were quietly mobilizing fleets using strategies no one else would recognize. The key difference was approach. The Zephyrians saw the Void Blight as an enemy to be destroyed. The Nexus viewed it as a problem to be calculated and solved through superior technology. The Ethereals treated it as a cosmic force to be understood through spiritual insight. Humans saw it as broken equipment that needed fixing. Admiral Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought, Stubborn Hope. Like all human ships, it looked crude and industrial next to the elegant vessels of other species. But Park was not concerned with appearance. "Status report," she requested from her communications officer. "All task forces are in position, Admiral. Research vessels are collecting data from 12 different blight sites. Engineering teams are setting up equipment in the buffer zones. Medical ships are standing by for refugee evacuation." Park nodded. While the galactic powers argued about causes and blamed each other for the disaster, humans had simply started working on solutions. They did what they always did when faced with impossible problems. They broke them down into smaller, manageable pieces. The Galactic Intelligence Network was monitoring human activities, but their analysts could not make sense of what they were seeing. Human behavior patterns did not match any known military or scientific doctrine. Their ships moved in ways that seemed random, but showed underlying coordination. Their research methods appeared crude, but produced results that advanced civilizations had missed. Agent Zyle of the Nexus Collective filed his report with growing confusion. Human ships are operating in areas that should kill all life forms instantly. They are collecting samples that our sensors cannot detect. They are using communication frequencies that theoretically should not work in blight-affected space. The report was processed by AIs that usually understood everything. For the first time in centuries, they responded with a request for more data because the current information made no logical sense. Similar reports came from Zephyrian intelligence and ethereal observers. Humans were doing things that should be impossible with their level of technology. They were going places that even the most advanced species avoided. They were treating the void blight not as a cosmic horror, but as a technical challenge. On board the Determination, Captain Santos was studying readings that would have sent other crews running in terror. The void blight was not just consuming matter and energy. It was rewriting the laws of physics in local space, making reality work differently. "This is fascinating," her science officer reported, apparently unaware that they were flying through what amounted to liquid nightmare. The blight is not actually destroying matter. It's converting it to a state that exists outside normal spacetime. Santos grinned, the same smile that worried her crew. "So it's not gone, just moved somewhere else. That means we can bring it back." While the galaxy continued to laugh at human arrogance, humanity was quietly proving that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to be too stubborn to accept that it was impossible. The first impossible report came from the Meridian sector 3 weeks after the humans started their operations. A Zephyrian patrol ship detected massive energy signatures where the planet Kelos should have been. According to all records, the void blight had consumed Kelos 6 months earlier, leaving nothing but twisted space where 8 million people once lived. Commander Thrax stared at his sensors in disbelief. "Scan again," he ordered his crew. "The instruments must be malfunctioning." The second scan showed the same thing. Kelos was there again. Not just the planet, but cities, orbital stations, and even the 3 moons that had also been consumed by the blight. More impossible still, life sign readings showed the planet was inhabited. "Sir," his communications officer reported nervously, "we're receiving signals from Kelos Planetary Control. They're asking for standard identification codes." Thrax had been a soldier for 40 years. He had seen planets destroyed and civilizations fall. But he had never seen anything like this. Dead worlds did not come back to life. The truth was even stranger than resurrection. When Zephyrian investigators arrived at Kelos, they found the planet exactly as it had been before the blight attacked. People were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that they had been dead for 6 months. Local timestamps showed no gap in their history. In the asteroid field where human ships had been working, they found equipment that made no sense to Zephyrian engineers. Strange devices that seemed to fold space around themselves. Machines that operated without any visible power source. And everywhere, humans working with the casual confidence of people fixing a broken air filter. Captain Santos greeted the Zephyrian investigation team with the same smile that made her own crew nervous. "Oh, hello," she said cheerfully. "We just finished putting things back where they belonged. Planet restoration is easier than we thought once you understand how the blight actually works." The Zephyrian team leader, a veteran officer named Colonel Vex, struggled to maintain his composure. "You put the planet back? 8 million people were dead." "Not dead," Santos corrected, checking something on a device that looked like a modified toolbox. "Just relocated to a parallel dimension. We simply reversed the process and brought them home. Would you like to see the technical specifications?" She offered Vex a datapad. The information on it was written in human script, with diagrams that looked like engineering blueprints mixed with mathematical equations that hurt to look at. Vex was an intelligent being with access to military databases containing the science of a dozen species. He understood perhaps 3% of what he was reading. Similar reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in zones that no one else could survive. Refugees who had escaped blight attacks reported seeing human vessels evacuating populations from doomed worlds. Most impossible of all, some refugee ships contained people who should have died weeks or months earlier. Dr. Sarah Kim commanded a human medical vessel called Second Chance. Her mission was officially listed as humanitarian aid, but her methods defied every law of medicine and physics that the galaxy knew. "We have another group of temporal displacement survivors," her medical officer reported. 15,000 people from the Sigma colony disaster. Dr. Kim nodded as she reviewed the data. How far back in their timeline were they when the blight hit? They experienced the full attack, but we extracted them at a point 37 hours before the event occurred. To the survivors, it felt like a miraculous rescue. To any outside observer, it looked like humans had somehow reached backwards through time to save people who had already died. The technology required for such an operation should have been impossible for a species that still used metal spacecraft. But the most alarming reports came from the Nexus Collective's deep space monitoring stations. Their advanced sensors had detected something that made their AI systems request immediate priority processing. The void blight was shrinking. Processing Unit 7 studied the data for the 5th time, running calculations through quantum processors that could model entire galaxies. The result was always the same, and always impossible. Human activities have resulted in a 12% reduction in blight expansion rate, it reported to the Emergency Nexus Council. Local reversals detected in 17 sectors where human operations are active. Phenomenon does not match any known scientific principles. The Council of AI Minds processed this information in nanoseconds, reaching the same conclusion. Either their instruments were malfunctioning across multiple star systems, or humans had developed technology that surpassed Nexus science by orders of magnitude. Request immediate analysis of human technical capabilities, the Council decided. Previous assessments may contain significant errors. When Nexus intelligence teams tried to analyze human equipment, they found devices that should not function according to known physics. Energy sources that produced more power than they consumed. Computers that processed information faster than quantum mechanics allowed. Weapons that fired bullets which arrived at their targets before being fired. The most disturbing discovery was that humans seemed unaware that what they were doing was impossible. When questioned, they explained their technology as if describing routine maintenance procedures. Engineer Bill Thompson was installing something called a reality anchor near a blight zone when a Nexus research team found him. The device looked like a metal box with blinking lights, utterly primitive compared to Nexus technology. "What does this machine do?" the lead researcher asked through translation software. Bill wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. "Oh, this little thing? It just makes sure the laws of physics work properly in local space. The blight tends to mess with causality, so we anchor reality back to normal parameters. Standard procedure when working in unstable zones." The Nexus team scanners showed that the device was somehow enforcing mathematical constants across a region of space where those constants had become variable. The technology required would theoretically need computing power equivalent to a small moon. "How does such a simple device accomplish reality manipulation?" they asked. Bill looked puzzled. "Reality manipulation? It's just an anchor, like dropping a weight to hold something steady. Physics wants to work normally. It just needs a little help when things get wobbly." The ethereal Dominion's response to these developments was different, but equally disturbed. Lady Mistral, convened an emergency council of the most powerful spiritual leaders in their civilization. They gathered in a temple that existed partially outside normal space, allowing them to observe cosmic forces directly. What they saw horrified them. "The humans are not using technology," Lady Mistral announced to the assembled mystics. "They are unconsciously reshaping reality through pure will. They believe so strongly that problems can be solved that the universe is beginning to agree with them. This was more dangerous than any weapon or scientific advance." The ethereals had spent millions of years learning to carefully manipulate cosmic forces through meditation and spiritual discipline. Humans seemed to be doing it accidentally, without training or understanding of the consequences. "They are making the impossible become possible, simply by refusing to accept that it is impossible," another mystic observed. "This kind of reality distortion could tear holes in the fabric of existence itself." Throughout the galaxy, emergency meetings were being called. Military advisors who had dismissed humans as primitive were updating their threat assessments. Scientists who had ignored human research were demanding access to their data. Spiritual leaders who had found humans spiritually limited were reconsidering their evaluations. Ambassador Chen received hundreds of urgent communication requests in a single day. Representatives who had laughed at her declaration 3 weeks earlier now wanted immediate meetings to discuss potential cooperation and technical sharing opportunities. But the most telling sign of how much had changed came when General Vorthak himself requested a private audience. The leader of the galaxy's greatest military force wanted to understand how a species with inferior weapons could accomplish what his armies could not. Chen accepted the meeting with the same calm expression she had worn on the chamber floor. When Vorthak's massive form filled her modest office, she simply poured 2 cups of coffee and waited. "How?" was all he said. Chen smiled and offered him a cup. "We told you we would handle it. Did you really think we were joking?" The emergency session of the Galactic Council was smaller than usual. Only the most essential representatives attended, and they spoke in whispers instead of the usual grand speeches. In the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed the current state of the Void Blight. The Dark Plague had been shrinking for 2 weeks straight. General Vorthak stood before the display, his usual confidence replaced by something none of his officers had seen before: uncertainty. "The human operations have achieved a 47% reduction in blight coverage," he reported, his voice lacking its normal commanding tone. "Their methods remain completely incomprehensible to our military scientists." He activated another section of the display. Red dots appeared throughout the galaxy, marking human activities. "They are operating in 312 separate locations simultaneously. Their fleet size should not allow for this scope of operations, yet somehow they are present everywhere the Blight has touched." Processing Unit 7 added its analysis in mechanical tones that seemed less certain than usual. "Human vessels exhibit properties that violate multiple fundamental laws. They appear to exist in several locations simultaneously. They travel faster than light without using jump gates or wormholes. They operate in zero-energy environments while maintaining full functionality." The most disturbing report came from Lady Mistral. The ethereal being's form flickered with distress as she spoke. "We have observed human workers entering the heart of the Blight itself. They walk through zones where reality has completely broken down, where cause and effect no longer function, where matter and energy exist in impossible states. They treat these conditions as minor workplace hazards." She gestured toward a recording from the Gamma sector, where the Blight had created a region where time moved backwards and gravity pushed instead of pulled. In the recording, human engineers could be seen working calmly while floating upside down, their tools functioning normally despite the chaotic physical laws around them. "This should be fatal," Lady Mistral continued. "No being should be able to survive in such conditions, let alone work efficiently. Yet humans show no signs of distress. They have adapted to impossible environments by simply deciding that the adaptation is necessary. The recordings were getting worse. In the Tau sector, humans had built a temporary base inside a zone where space itself was folded backwards. Ships could be seen arriving at the base before they had left their departure points. Workers were having conversations with future versions of themselves, coordinating tasks across multiple timelines simultaneously. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, Chief of Human Engineering Operations, had been interviewed by Nexus intelligence teams. The conversation had been recorded and now played for the Emergency Council. The folded space is actually quite useful, Dr. Harper's voice explained cheerfully. We can complete construction projects before we start them, then send the completed materials backwards to when we need them. It cuts our work time in half. The Nexus interviewer's voice cracked with electronic strain. But this violates causality. Effects cannot precede their causes. That's a very rigid way of thinking about time, Harper replied. Time is just another dimension, like height or width. If you need to reach something on a high shelf, you use a ladder. If you need to reach something in the past, you use temporal mechanics. Same principle. General Vorthak paused the recording. Our best theoretical physicists confirm that what she describes is mathematically impossible. Yet our sensors show it happening. The evidence was mounting that humans were not just solving the void-blight crisis. They were casually breaking the fundamental rules that governed reality. More disturbing still, they seemed unaware that they were doing anything unusual. Commander Sarah Kim had achieved the impossible by establishing a medical station inside an active blight zone. When Zephyrian military advisors demanded to know how she was protecting her patients from reality distortion effects, her answer had shocked them. Protection? She had asked, looking puzzled. The patients need medical care, so we provide medical care. Reality distortion is just an environmental factor, like bad weather. You work around it. Her station was treating refugees who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. People whose bodies phased between matter and energy randomly, and patients whose injuries were occurring backwards through time. To Commander Kim and her staff, these were simply interesting medical challenges requiring creative solutions. The final piece of evidence came from deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy. Every major power had independently detected the same phenomenon. Humans were somehow pulling entire star systems out of the void and putting them back where they belonged. The Deneb system had been the first to return. 23 worlds, 4 suns, and 6 billion people simply reappeared in normal space, as if they had never been consumed by the blight. Long-range scans showed human ships in the area, along with equipment that registered as both present and absent on sensors. Then came the Rigel system. Then dozens more. Each restoration defied every known law of physics. Matter and energy that had been converted to non-existence were somehow being converted back. People who had died were alive again, with no memory of being dead. Entire civilizations were being plucked from oblivion and returned to life. The implications were terrifying. If humans could bring back dead star systems, what else could they do? Could they erase civilizations from existence? Could they rewrite history itself? Could they casually alter the fundamental structure of the universe? Processing Unit 7 attempted to calculate the energy requirements for system restoration and suffered a processing crash. The numbers were so far beyond possible that the AI's logic circuits could not accept them as real. Emergency meetings were called in every major capital. Military commanders who had never shown fear were requesting immediate defensive preparations. Scientists who had spent centuries studying the universe were questioning whether anything they knew was actually true. The ethereal dominion's response was the most extreme. Lady Mistral announced that her people were preparing to phase permanently out of normal reality rather than exist in a universe where humans could casually violate cosmic law. They are not bound by the rules that limit all other life, she declared to her council. They exist outside the normal framework of reality. This makes them more dangerous than any weapon ever created. General Vorthak was equally alarmed, but more practical in his concerns. If humans can restore dead systems, they can presumably destroy living ones just as easily. Our entire military doctrine is based on the assumption that certain things are impossible. That assumption is now invalid. He activated another display showing human ship movements over the past month. The pattern looked random until the computer highlighted the underlying structure. Human vessels had visited every strategic location in Zephyrian space, often appearing in heavily defended systems without triggering any alarms. They have been everywhere, Vorthak realized with growing horror. Our most secure facilities, our hidden bases, our classified research stations. They have complete intelligence on our entire civilization, and we never detected their presence. The Nexus Collective's analysis was even more disturbing. Human technology was not just advanced beyond their understanding, it was advanced beyond the theoretical limits of what technology could accomplish. They are using principles that our mathematics cannot describe, Processing Unit 7 reported to the Emergency AI Council. Their devices operate by convincing the universe to work differently than its normal patterns. This suggests reality manipulation at a level that approaches cosmic creator abilities. The meeting continued for hours, but every line of discussion led to the same conclusion. Humanity had revealed abilities that made the three major powers look like primitive tribes by comparison. Worse, humans seemed to be getting stronger and more capable every day, as if the act of solving impossible problems was teaching them to solve even more impossible problems. As the session ended, General Vorthak transmitted new orders to every Zephyrian military facility in the galaxy. All forces were to go to maximum alert status. Not because humanity had shown any aggressive intentions, but because they had shown the ability to casually accomplish feats that redefined what was possible. The galaxy's most feared military leader had learned the most important lesson of his career. Never assume that just because something is impossible, humans will not do it anyway. In the distance, human ships continued their work, their crews whistling cheerfully as they put the universe back together, one star system at a time. 6 months after Ambassador Chen's simple declaration, the Galactic Council chamber had been completely redesigned. The old arrangement, with the three major powers at the center, was gone. Instead, a single modest desk sat in the middle of the vast space, surrounded by chairs arranged in concentric circles. Every seat was filled. Chen sat at the central desk, reading through routine reports as if this was just another day at the office. Around her, representatives from hundreds of species waited nervously for her attention. The beings who had once ruled the galaxy now waited for permission to speak. "The Void Blight Elimination Project is complete," she announced, looking up from her paperwork. "All consumed systems have been restored to their original positions. All displaced populations have been returned to their home worlds. All reality distortions have been corrected to standard universal constants." The chamber remained silent. Everyone was still processing the implications of what humanity had accomplished. In 6 months, they had not just stopped the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. They had reversed it completely, undoing centuries of damage as if it had never happened. General Vorthak, once the most feared military leader in known space, raised his hand, like a student asking permission to speak. "Ambassador Chen, our scientists would like to understand how the restoration process was accomplished. Our records show that some systems were returned to states that existed before the blight began spreading." Chen smiled with the same casual confidence that had once worried her own crew. "Oh, that. We had to go back and fix the initial conditions that made the blight possible in the first place. Can't have it starting up again somewhere else. The temporal mechanics were a bit tricky, but nothing our engineers couldn't handle." She said it as if discussing routine maintenance on a broken air filter. The idea that humans had casually traveled backwards through time to prevent a cosmic disaster from ever occurring was presented as a minor technical challenge. Processing Unit 7's circuits flickered with barely controlled electronic anxiety. Ambassador, our analysis indicates that preventing the blight's origin would create temporal paradoxes. How was this resolved? Paradoxes are just another type of problem, Chen replied, making a note on her datapad. Dr. Morrison's team developed a standard procedure for paradox resolution. Something about creating stable causal loops and anchoring the timeline at key decision points. I don't understand all the technical details, but the universe seems happy with the solution. Lady Mistral's ethereal form was more solid than anyone had seen it in months, a sign of extreme emotional distress. Ambassador, your people have fundamentally altered the nature of reality itself. Do you not understand the cosmic implications of what you have done? Chen looked up with mild curiosity. We fixed a problem that was killing people. Was there something else we should have considered? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The greatest cosmic minds in the galaxy had spent months trying to understand humanity's reality-bending capabilities, only to discover that humans viewed their impossible achievements as basic problem-solving. A small species representative from the Outer Rim, someone who had never spoken in council before, gathered courage to ask a question. Ambassador, does this mean humanity is now the ruling power in the galaxy? Chen looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Ruling power? We're maintenance staff. We fix things that are broken. Why would we want to rule anyone? She activated a holographic display showing human activities across the galaxy. We've got 17 different repair projects running right now. The quantum instability in the Magellanic Cluster, the gravitational anomalies near the galactic core, that weird dimensional rift that's been bothering the Andorian sector for 3 centuries. Standard maintenance work. The display showed human ships working in areas that other species had written off as permanently dangerous. They were fixing problems that had existed for millennia, treating cosmic disasters as routine technical challenges. Of course, Chen continued, we could use some help with the paperwork. Running a galaxy-wide repair service generates a lot of documentation. We'd appreciate it if the existing governments could handle administrative tasks while we focus on the engineering work. General Vorthak found himself in the strangest position of his military career, offering to do filing for the species he had once dismissed as primitive. The Zephyrian Empire would be honored to assist with administrative functions, he said formally. The Nexus Collective and Ethereal Dominion quickly offered similar assistance. Within minutes, the 3 former galactic superpowers were competing to provide clerical support for humanity's repair operations. Chen accepted their offers with the same matter-of-fact attitude she had shown throughout the crisis. Excellent. We'll send you the filing procedures tomorrow. Nothing complicated, just standard maintenance documentation. A new representative from the recently restored Deneb system stood to speak. His people had been among the first consumed by the Void Blight, and among the first restored by human intervention. Ambassador, he said, his voice thick with emotion, my people owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. 23 worlds, 6 billion lives, all returned from oblivion. How can we possibly thank you? Chen looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. You don't owe us anything. Your systems were broken, so we fix them. That's what we do. It would be strange to expect payment for doing our job. She stood up and gathered her papers, apparently considering the meeting finished. If there are no more urgent maintenance requests, I need to check on the quantum realignment project in Sector 7. The local physics have been unstable since that dark matter experiment went wrong last century. As she headed toward the exit, dozens of voices called out with new requests. Could humanity fix the temporal anomalies in the Beta Quadrant? What about the dying suns in the outer spiral? Was there anything that could be done about the cosmic radiation storms near the galactic edge? Chen paused at the chamber entrance, and turned back to the assembled representatives. Send us the technical specifications for anything that needs fixing. If it's broken, we can probably fix it. If it's impossible, we'll need a few extra weeks to figure out the approach. She left the chamber with the casual confidence of someone heading to repair a leaky pipe. Behind her, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy began composing formal requests for humanity's engineering services. In the weeks that followed, a new order emerged. Governments continued to govern their populations, but major decisions were increasingly made in consultation with human technical advisors. Military forces maintained their traditional structures, but strategic planning now included assessments of what humanity considered fixable problems. The Nexus Collective found themselves redesigning their most advanced technologies based on casual suggestions from human engineers. The Ethereal Dominion discovered that their ancient mystical practices were just primitive versions of techniques that humans use for routine equipment calibration. Most remarkable was the change in General Vorthak. The feared military leader became humanity's most enthusiastic advocate, explaining to anyone who would listen that humans were the ultimate strategic asset because they simply refused to accept that anything was impossible. They do not see enemies, he told his officers. They see malfunctioning systems that need repair. They do not see disasters. They see engineering challenges with interesting parameters. This makes them more dangerous than any weapon and more valuable than any ally. The transformation was complete when Chen received a priority communication from the Galactic Core. Long-range sensors had detected signs of another cosmic threat approaching from outside the galaxy, a fleet of dark ships using technology that made no sense to any known science. The emergency alert was transmitted to every major power simultaneously. Within hours, the same representatives who had once ruled through strength and advanced technology were sending urgent requests to humanity's modest headquarters on Earth. Chen read through the threat assessment while drinking coffee from a ceramic mug that said Galaxy's best maintenance staff. After reviewing the data, she sent back a simple response. Looks like another repair job. We'll handle it. Across the galaxy, every major military force and advanced civilization relaxed. The new threat, whatever it was, had just been classified as a maintenance issue. That meant it was already as good as fixed. In the end, humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force or superior technology. They had taken over by being so incredibly competent at fixing problems that everyone else had simply handed them the job of keeping the universe working properly. And humanity, true to form, had accepted the responsibility with a cheerful shrug and gotten back to work. The maintenance staff would handle it. They always did.